Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Set Lusting Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson. We are getting off the Bruce train, though I'm sure he will come up, as he often does. And we're going to play Dumb and Sabotage. I
Exactly.
have I have Janine Tang on the podcast today. I'm excited about talking about language and raising children and just a whole myriad of subjects. So, Janine, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Jesse.
Yeah, so why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
Awesome. So I'm originally from Hawaii, Honolulu, Hawaii. I was born and raised there, and who would ever leave Hawaii? Ex- Except in 2005, I got this acting bug and moved to Los Angeles. But thankfully, I was already a speech therapist since 2001 because, when I moved to Los Angeles, I wanted to do acting. So I was waitressing so I could be open for auditions. And I was working like 60 hours a week just trying to make ends meet. So I got my license as a speech therapist in Los Angeles. And, now I'm 23 years later since I graduated. I'm, still working as a speech therapist, doing acting part time. And then I'm a full time mom of a disabled child. And, it's a whole, life is never boring. It's always variety and keeping me on my toes.
That is often, gosh, there's a lot to talk about there. And so this will be fun. But to start out with, I always like to start at the beginning. So you already said that you grew up in Hawaii. So what kind of music were you listening to growing up?
Yeah, I think we're always just a little bit later than the West Coast, but we had hip hop, we had rap, we had R&B, but also like local Hawaii music, which is, contemporary Hawaiian, reggae. We had a lot of different kinds of music. And then I played in the orchestra in high school, so I also love classical music and all. So I feel like I'm very eclectic, and I don't have like one particular kind of music where I'm like, I only need to listen to this.
What instrument did you play?
I played the cello.
Ah, very nice. Very cool. Do you still play it every once in a while?
I don't play it now, and I wish I did. It's such a big instrument, though. I always
Yeah.
thought, okay, I can buy one and, keep it in the house, but it's just so big. Although
Yeah.
I played it for 6 years, I love it. I think it's the best sounding instrument, and I wish I did still have one. They do have those electric ones. Have you seen them?
No,
Like
I haven't.
yeah, it's almost like it's like the essence of the cello. So it's like the middle part, but not like the whole body. And then
Okay.
you plug it in
Mm-hmm.
to whatever speaker, and it sounds like a cello. So it's like an electric cello, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's kind of cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what you already shared a little bit, but I'm curious, how did you get the acting bug?
I did, I did performance speeches in high school and college.
Yeah.
And then I, did a couple plays in college and everything. And
Where'd
I
you go
I
to
liked
school?
it. So University of Hawaii, Manoa,
Okay.
but I did my theater stuff at the Pacific University in Oregon
Okay.
and in Forest Grove, Oregon, and I did a couple plays there. And then when I was going to grad school in Hawaii, I also did a play with like a local theater group called Kumakahua Theater, and that was great. And then I finished grad school, and I was like, I'm going to just work, right? And then I went through a breakup. And I was like a mid-20 crisis. I was like, I think I need to go to acting class. And so I did. And so I kind of got an acting bug from there. And I think it was right around the time that Lost was starting to film in Hawaii.
Sure.
And I had a lot of classmates, taking class in Hawaii, then moving to Los Angeles. So I got a little bit of FOMO. I was like, well, maybe I can act in Los Angeles. And I've been on some shows as a co-star. I've done some live theater, independent films and such, but acting isn't my main gig. It would be great if it was, but I'm glad that I have something else to fall back on. But I do love acting. I think it's an amazing craft, and there's nothing like acting and especially acting on stage. And having a child now, I don't have time to go to rehearsals and take the time to do live theater, but there's
Hmm.
nothing else like being on stage. But just being on set in itself is just really amazing. I love it.
Yeah, I can imagine that it seems like it would be fun, right? The joke is they pay you to wait. They don't pay you for acting, right? That's the old
Yeah.
joke. So kind of talk to me a little bit about if when you talked about that you went to Los Angeles, you started acting, but what was the moment that I guess why did you decide, well, if I'm going to do a side gig, I want to do something a little more significant or something a little more substance, and that's my words, not yours, than necessarily working in food service or something.
Yeah, so I going back, I was already a speech therapist in 2001,
Okay.
and then I moved to Los Angeles in 2005. So I already had my
Okay.
license in Hawaii.
Okay.
I was already, doing the practice. Well, when I originally moved to Los Angeles, I was like, I'm just gonna waitress because I had done that since I was 18.
Sure.
I had, did that through undergraduate school, graduate school, and even when I was working full time in Hawaii, I was still waitressing part time. So I thought that was really would be the easy thing to do while I was acting. But I was working way too many hours. And I found that if I got my license in California, I could work half as many hours and still make the same amount of money. So it was more about, mental health and physical, tiredness. I was just really just exhausted from working
Sure.
so much as a waitress. And, I'm glad I had a degree in speech therapy already because it's a great profession and I've been able to impact more lives, doing speech therapy than I would be able to do acting. And you
Yeah.
right?
Well,
For the most part, I think.
sure. What about why speech therapy? What kind of drawn you to that career?
Yeah, so it goes back, all the way my earliest memory of wanting to like help people and be of service to people was when my grandfather was sick when I was about 8 years old. He passed away from lung cancer. And I just remember just feeling really helpless. Like I wanted to be able to help him more. And that sparked something in me to want to be of service to people. And I thought maybe I'd want to be a teacher. And then in high school, I played a lot of sports and I heard about physical therapy. And I thought maybe that was somebody who could have helped my grandfather. And when it came time to apply to grad school, because you needed a graduate degree, I had gone to undergraduate with my English literature degree and creative writing minor. And when it came time to apply to physical therapy school, at the time it felt like everybody was going to apply. I went to a school that had a physical therapy program and it
Yeah.
felt like everybody was applying. I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be saturated. I was a little bit overwhelmed. But I had done some performance speeches in high school and college performance competitions. And so somebody had mentioned, have you thought about speech therapy? And I really hadn't heard much, if anything, about it at the time. But then I found out, because I had finished my undergraduate degree in Oregon, I found out that the University of Hawaii at Manoa, where I was from, had a speech therapy program. So I thought it was a great time to like go back home, go to grad school, and then, start my career. And at the time, also, even now, speech therapy is such a need, right? There's so many places that need speech therapists in the schools and the hospitals and everything. And the Department of Education in Hawaii was very much in need of speech therapists. So they actually offered people stipends for school. So they're like, we'll give you money for school if you work for us for 3 years. So I thought that was a win-win because I wouldn't have to pay for school and
Yeah.
I got a job, right? I was like, okay, I have a guaranteed job. I don't need to so much, I wouldn't have had to like really apply because they were already expecting me to, do that service for them already. So it was great. I loved it going into it. And I'm really glad that I did because it really it pulls from my language communication background and it helps me help other people. So I think it really melded like my strengths, and I love it to this day. And I love working with older people as well. So I still work with geriatric population in the hospitals, as well as I work with a lot of 0 to 3 year olds, we call early intervention. And I've worked with school age and everybody in between. So, some people specialize in just young children, or some people specialize with just adults. And I love to work with every population. So I kind of work part-time in both. And for me, it gives me variety, it gives me spontaneity, it helps me, keep things fresh and not get bored or overly stressed or burnt out in anything.
Do do you think part of this is your love of performing and being a role and then helping someone else do that as well in a form of speech therapy?
I think a little bit, yeah, because when you're working, especially with children, it's like you have to be animated. You have to, play with them, right?
Right.
And for children, it's about imagination. And for adults, we often lose that, right? Children
Yes.
can play and they can just, that is their world. Everything is real. Everything is so real to them. And to be able to play with them and get on their level and be animated and silly and not worry about what my face might look like in this moment, you know, I think that it's really a strength because kids, you're able to gain rapport with them easier. They're able to get out of their shell. A lot of children that are shy, once you start playing with them and you gain their trust, then they're able to try to say some sounds. Some kids are very shy and they don't want to try. They don't want to get things wrong. And if you are not afraid to be silly, then, it helps them to be silly as well.
I had a friend, and she's still my friend, but when named Sarah Hickman, and she was very active in Arts for People, which would go around doing musical therapy for people in hospitals. Where they bring in the like similar to elementary school, the little instruments you would do. And so people that were doing physical therapy, she would also do musical therapy to help them to move into, into speech. So I imagine this is very rewarding. I love the idea that this diversity because it keeps it fresh with you. I assume the different, whether it's the different age groups, each has different challenges and different rewards.
Absolutely. Yes, you're exactly right. Because, even each individual person has
Right.
different challenges, right? And we also get different a sense of satisfaction when you're able to, make progress with them, each individual person. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, I think working in the hospitals, I have friends who only work in the hospitals and I have friends who only work with kids. And each of them are stressed out, in some capacity. And I'm
Right.
stressed out a little bit here, a little bit there, but also rewarded here, rewarded there. And so
Yeah.
I have the best of both worlds. And I couldn't imagine myself working with just one population.
Mhm. So I did talk about you have written a book. Talk to me a little bit about the origins of that. How did you come to write a book? Was there a road to Damascus moment where you're like, I need to share this story?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had, the outline in my mind for a really long time because I just wanted to be able to have more education provided to parents, caregivers, other educators about how to work with children on, presenting language to them, and also how to use strategies to practice language with them. Because I found that, oftentimes, especially, say for instance, parents, first time parents, we over anticipate. I was a first time parent as well. So you over anticipate what the child might need because you want to be a really good parent and you want to
Yes.
make sure your child isn't uncomfortable, they're not crying, all of their needs are met, that they're dry, they're fed, they're warm, they have toys, they have everything they might possibly need, right? And in a way too, in your ego, you are also showing everybody that I did this for my child. I know how to take care of my child. And by doing too much, sometimes we're actually doing a disservice to the child because they're not able to interact, naturally with their environment. They don't have to indicate what they need or what they want. Crying is a form of communication. Whining, babbling, cooing, all this stuff is a form of communication. So when the child doesn't have to do those things, they just are learned to be tended to a lot of times. And then even as teachers, we might do too much for the kids and over prepare. Even at snack time, I work at a preschool, and I always tell the teachers, don't give them all of their snack, just give them a little bit so they can ask for more, so that these kids can learn to communicate rather than, oh, it's snack time, I get all of my snack, I don't have to talk. So it's like a lot of, strategies that would help to promote language and communication that I think is really, really lacking. Because as a parent, when I was pregnant, I had to go to birthing class, right? I had to learn what's going to happen when I give birth, how to put a diaper on, how to make a bottle, and all this stuff. But then, do you have to go to a class to learn about language and how to interact with your child? You don't. You're not required to. All of those are electives in a way, right? You have to seek those out. And I think there's not enough, I would call it preventative language, therapy that's out there if there was more training, a lot of these parents wouldn't feel so lost. They wouldn't feel that, am I doing this right? Why is my child not talking? They would have some education on how to interact and play. And I think that would really help decrease the number of kids that need speech therapy. Because working in early intervention, I see a lot of kids that are physically sound. They're fine. They can run around, they can climb. Intellectually, they seem fine. They understand if you tell them a direction, but they're just not talking. So they learn to be given stuff and have stuff done for them. And so they never have to indicate or babble or talk.
I That's really interesting. Not the same thing, but you're reminding me. So Linda's my wife, and so we're expecting our first child way back in '88,
Mhm.
and so we were attending the Lamaze class, the birthing class, and I joked that every week they gave me something else to worry about, right? Like just I left there going, but one of the best things that I was told is the lady leading the class said a couple things. One, everyone would go, shh, you'll wake the baby. No, be loud. Do whatever you normally do. The child will adapt to that. They will learn, and so do that. If you normally go to Sam's on Saturdays, go to Sam's on Saturdays, right? They'll adapt. But the favorite thing I heard, and it really helped us, is they said, children can't talk yet. Babies can't talk. And understand they are being bombarded with senses, their eyes, hears, now all the five senses. And sometimes crying is how they let out stress. And so if you've checked your child, they're dry, you know they're full, you're knowing maybe they just need to cry for a while. And it's okay. You're not a bad parent. And that really meant a lot to us. And it made sense to us. Like, oh, so I think it's similar when you work. I've been told by, like, when my mom had had a stroke, they would say, don't finish the sentence for her. Let her take the time to say it. And because you want to, you're trying to be polite. Let me finish the sentence for you, right? And so are you saying sometimes parents do that without thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. A parent knows that means that they want milk,
Right,
or that I have a lot of parents who say, I know exactly what my child wants. I'm like, yeah, because you know exactly what that whine or vocalization or that reaching for whatever, you know what they want because you've learned to anticipate,
right,
what they might want or need. And a lot of kids and even older siblings will talk for their sibling, right? So the baby might or the young child might, start to babble about something, and then the older sibling goes, oh, they want to do this and that, or they grab whatever they want for the baby. And I do think that happens quite a bit. And one of the things too is that, sometimes parents just need to slow their speech down just a little bit, because sometimes parents are talking so fast that the kids don't have the ability to either speak at that speed or babble or process what the parent is saying. So modeling speech just a little bit slower, like I'm talking just a little bit slower right now. It's not dumbing it down, but it's just helping the child process what those sounds are, and that they can hear that there are parts to words, and then those words make up a sentence or a thought, and there's a intonation to the words, right? So when you're saying something to a child, there's intonation. The question goes up and the statement goes down, and there's a melodic tone sometimes. I love incorporating music. Like you said, your friend does music therapy,
Yeah.
and I love incorporating music and nursery rhymes, sing-songy things to words and sentences, because it helps the child incorporate the language left side of the brain to the music right side of the brain, and helps that to become more of a multi-sensory and integrated part of learning.
The I will send you a link. When Sarah had her first child, she did an album called Newborn, and she was a big proponent of parents should sing with their children. And one of the songs is Goops in it. And she told the story that they were there to see the pediatrician and there was little eye goop. And so she started goops in it, got a little goops in it. And the pediatrician walked in and go, what am I doing? But Sarah said, just make up silly songs, right? And they said you'll bond with your children so much. So I'll send you a link to the CD. It's really wonderful. What do you think? I'll do this a couple ways. What are some misconceptions that you see parents are doing? And then after that, if you could come up with one or two things that you think would serve parents well to help their children, what would they be?
Yeah, so some misconceptions. I think that parents have to understand that it's okay for their child to cry, like you were saying, right? So I think some parents don't want their children to cry at all, right? So there's a chapter in my book called No Child's Ever Died of Crying. As far as we know, in parentheses, as far as, so I think that, you know, I have one family who I love. They love the family. But, once their daughter starts crying, they're like, here, eat this. They're trying to pacify the cry with a treat.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, now she's conditioning you by the cry to give me something that I really want,
Yes.
when she should be able to, use her words, because we've been working on words, and she can imitate one, two, three words at a time. So she has the ability. So I think knowing that your child, they need to be stretched. Their abilities need to be stretched. So like I would never ask a child who cannot babble to speak in a full sentence, but I might ask a child who can say a single word to imitate two words. Or I
Right.
might have them stretch their abilities a little bit further. If I know that they can say a word or do a sign, I'm going to have them do that in our tasks, in order to get the toy that they want or get the snack or whatever it is. If they're not going to do the task just because they just don't want to do it, I need to find a way to be creative to tempt them, to want them to play. But also, I'm not going to give in and just give them their toy just because they just didn't want to talk, if that makes sense. So if they cry or whine during that task because they just don't want to perform at their level that they're able to, that's I'm going to allow them to cry and whine, and that's going to be okay. So having them letting parents know that if a child cries, it's not the end of the world. Sometimes it's because that's their way of trying to fight back with having to do the work. But if you don't push them to do the work, they're not going to develop the way that you need them to be confident communicators. So it's okay for a child to cry. And then, some of the things I would love parents to know is just like, don't ask a yes no question unless you're ready to honor the no. So everybody falls into this at some point where they're like, are you ready to do your homework? Are you ready to clean up? Are you ready to go to bed? Do you want an apple? Do you want a banana? Do you want a cookie? Do you want some milk? So it goes in this rabbit hole. If the child says no, like, what are you going to actually do? If you say, oh, do you want to clean up? And they go, no. You're like, oh, you're going to clean up anyway. Okay, are you ready to go to bed? No. Oh, you're going to go to bed anyway. So you kind of need to get around that by offering choices. So if I tell my son, hey, we're going to get ready for bed, do you want to brush your teeth first or change into pajamas first? Hey, we're going to cut your nails. Do you want to cut them today or tomorrow? Or I might tell a kid, hey, I have a book and a puzzle. Which one do you want to do first? And oftentimes I'll hold items, shoulder width apart. So even if a child cannot talk, they might look at one item and then I will give them those words. So if they say, if I say, do you want to play with the ball or bubbles? And they look at the ball, I'm like, oh, ball. Yeah, let's play with the ball. And then we can work on vocabulary around the ball. The ball bounces, we can catch it, we can kick it. So we can do all kinds of things. So working with choices will help with cooperation and participation because it'll kind of make that child feel like they have some power, like some autonomy, and they're like, I made a choice and we're going to do that rather than this person's trying to control what I'm doing and they're making me do something I said I didn't want to do.
Y- Yeah, because one of the things that we joke about is that, 12 or 13, they start because it's in their DNA, they're trying to learn to be an adult. And so they're pushing against boundaries and you have to work through that. And then when they're about 24, 25, they go, "Oh, they're our friends again." But I love the idea of that instead of a statement, okay, bedtime's 8:30, you know that, let's go. Right? But
Yeah.
the idea, it's bedtime. Are we going to brush your teeth? Or are you going to put on your pajamas? Right? It is that I love that idea of like it's almost suggestive selling. I've made the assumption that you've agreed to go to bed. And now then I'm giving you, do you want the car in red or do you want it in blue? Right? So that's a really interesting, I think, very productive way to help build that, discussion. So I think that's pretty cool. So talk to me a little bit of book. You've kind of shared that you were going through this journey and you felt like you needed to send this message to parents. So where'd you get the title from? And talk to the journey of writing it.
Yeah, so the title, I've been using this term for like, I don't know, 20 some years, almost as long as I've been doing a speech therapy. And I found that kids just love to be smarter than us, right?
Yeah.
And so the play dumb part is like I love asking absurd questions,
Okay.
because if I'm asking kids, oh, what does a dog say? And they're not answering. I go, oh, does a dog say ba ba? And they're like, what? And then you get all these kids like, no, that's wrong. Or they
Yeah.
they look at you, they'll at least look at you funny usually. So playing dumb in that sense, or like even my son, I feel like, language has digressed since he's 12. He's become this mute little teenager. Well,
Yes.
he'll hand me his water bottle, and I'm like, "That's your water bottle." He goes, "Mom, like what? Water, Mom? Excuse me? Wait,
Yeah.
what did you want?" Oh, then he'll be like, "Mom, may I please have more water?" So it's playing dumb in a natural way because there's this interaction of, the kid might say up. Like, oh yeah, that's up there. Up. Oh, you want to come up? Oh, up, please. So you can have this natural, like, I'm not really sure what you were saying. Although, as an adult, who can interpret, exactly what they're saying, but you're playing dumb. You're
Right.
playing as if you don't know. All right. And then the sabotage part is all about practice. It's about, creatively and, not destructively sabotaging their lives by giving them a little bit of snack rather than the whole bowl. So they need to ask for more. or having their favorite toy in sight but out of reach. So they need to ask, may I, like, ball, please, or like, I want the doll, or whatever it is. I've heard of some therapists taking batteries out of toys. So the child's like, this isn't working. Like, how are they going to incorporate language with that? Or like wind up toys are great because you wind it up, you have it go, and then it stops. And if the child wants to do it again, they need to tell you or indicate that they want more. And so that's a great way to incorporate language. It's just sabotage is really about repetition. And it's like if you were playing basketball, would you just shoot a free throw every now and then? No, you would practice it, right? Over and
Yes.
over again until you hit mastery. So sabotage is a great way for parents to think about how they can just practice language throughout the day with their kids.
And it sounds like that a lot of this is there are simple things that you can just put into your routine that will help your child communicate better.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I would get my son dressed in the morning when he was little and couldn't even speak yet, I would still offer him, do you want the blue shirt or the green shirt? And I would hold up two different things, and whichever one he looked at, that's the one we wore. And we would talk about the color. We would talk about, putting your arms in the holes, putting your head in, and just incorporating through our daily routines, opportunities to practice language, introduce vocabulary, have him make some choices and then understand that he can be in charge a little bit about his day. And, simple things like we used to do a lot of sequencing, even when he was little, and even before he could like verbalize. I would say, we're going to be doing, we're going to eat breakfast, we're going to get dressed, and then we're going to get in the car. And then as he got older, it'd be like, now he's like, what's our plan for today, Mom? I'm like, okay, we're gonna go to school, and after school, we're gonna go pick up your, he is disabled, so we had to get a new wrist brace today. We're gonna get a wrist brace, and we're gonna go see Papa Chaz for his birthday, and then we're gonna go home because I have to, be on a meeting soon. So he remembers all these things, and it helps him stay organized. And kids love, even though they're chaotic, kids are chaotic at times, they really want structure. And so when you set expectations and you present structure to them, they feel that they are part of that day rather than things are happening to them. I think that's really important.
I like the idea that structure. It is this is often this comes across strange, but my son was 2 or 3, and our pediatrician was saying, you know, you have a very strong-willed child, and you're going to need to manage that. And I had been raised with a parent that had a bad temper, and so there was a lot of corporal punishment, as me as a child. And my the pediatrician goes, no, that's child abuse, Jesse. That's not, and so forget the politics involved, but she recommended The Strong-Willed Child, the book. And the biggest thing I remember out of it is unless you've explained the rules to your child, you can't expect them to obey them. You have to sit down. And we were watching TV once, and we went into the kitchen, and he had taken our whole box of Tide soap detergent and then built a sandbox. Like he had thrown it on the floor, and playing in it. And my wife was just furious. And I was like, well, technically, we've never told him that Tide is not a toy. Oh, I don't care. So, but what was funny though is at the time, and I still am, I was a manager of people. And I realized that's the same basis. You can't expect your teammates, your employees to reach their goals to do this unless you set clear expectations of what you're expecting them. And so I had a friend in HR who goes, I think it's amazing that you've taken a child book and used it for that. But as I'm listening to your story, I do think there's working with my teammates of don't ask a yes or no question unless you're ready for a no. And if you can do it a different way, that, we're going to have our one-on-one. Do you want to talk about, this project or that project first? Do you want to discuss this? That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think you can definitely relate how to work with children to working with adults and also with seniors.
Yes.
Absolutely.
What's next for you? What's next for you? What do you want to do creatively now?
Well, creatively, I would love to be on a greater stage, because I feel like I would love for everybody to read the book. Absolutely, that'd be great. But I also think like speaking engagements and trainings where I can impact more people and get the word out, I think is where I would like to see within the next year. Like I would say, I
Hmm.
want to do a TED Talk
Yeah.
within the next year would be amazing. But I would love to, continue to be on podcasts as, a speaker, an expert about speech language pathology and language development, but, being able to speak on stage to a bigger audience. Because I think that I really truly believe we can decrease the number of kids that need speech therapy and empower parents, caregivers, and educators about feeling confident in working with kids with their own children because I feel like a lot of parents too, they are afraid to ask for help. They're afraid that it's going to be a reflection on their parenting if their child is not performing up to, their peers. And it's really not because, they're not speech therapists and we don't expect them to be at the level of a speech therapist, but they can learn stuff, some basic things that could really impact how their child learns and develops and becomes confident speakers because these little kids are going to be the leaders of tomorrow. And the sooner we can get them to be confident speakers, the better, and it'll just make the world, I guess, a better place, I guess.
No, I think that's a great goal. I think it's a wonderful goal. What should I've asked you that I haven't, Janine?
Uh, As far as my book, I guess maybe like I guess who should read the book?
That is a great question.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
who is, well, let me ask it this way. Who did you write the book for? And share that, and then I'll ask you a follow-up question.
yeah, absolutely. So, I wrote the book for anybody who is going to interact with children, whether you are a parent or a caregiver, whether you're an auntie, an uncle, a grandparent, or even an educator. So, definitely young speech therapists, speech therapy assistants, teachers, preschool teachers, anybody who's going to interact with kids and can help children develop in some way.
Has there been a target audience that surprised you that have reached back to you and have enjoyed the book or found the book useful?
I would say like other therapists that are not speech therapists, but like
Yeah.
occupational therapists, physical therapists, and even like my friends who read it who aren't parents.
Hmm.
They're like, "Oh, wow, I have a niece and I didn't expect, some of my friends to read it and they did and they found it really useful." And I was like, "Oh, that was really cool." They're like, "I'm gonna recommend it to so and so who, I would love for them to be able to recommend it to a friend who's having a kid or who has grandchildren." I did one podcast for grandparents who have taken on the role of the guardians for their grandchildren.
Sure.
And I didn't know that there was such a large audience of those people, of that, grandparents taking care of grandchildren. So that was very cool to be a part of that as well.
That's very neat. Now, you mentioned your son is a teenager?
He's 12. He thinks he's
Okay.
15.
Yeah, well, of course. So what is the music going on in the Tang household?
Oh my gosh. Well, he's pretty eclectic himself because,
Okay.
his dad and I are both, children of the 90s.
Right.
So there's a lot of hip hop going on, a lot of Michael Jackson. Currently, I want to say he was into AC/DC for a little bit. Yeah, he's pretty eclectic.
Okay.
He's pretty eclectic. But he also, although he's 12, he still loves things like The Lion Guard on TV.
Yeah.
So he'll be playing like the songs from The Lion Guard, and in the next moment he's playing Danger Zone from from Top everything. But he loves Michael Jackson, and he's into Bruno Mars as well. So I don't think anything is like he's not like I guess like myself, he's not set on one kind of music.
Yeah.
Everything from Disney to hard rock, I guess.
And how about you? Anything on your iPod that you're listening to?
You know, Tragically I listen to a lot of radio. So anything top 40.
Nothing wrong with that. That's awesome. That is
Yeah.
great. That is good. All right, so Play Dumb and Sabotage, the book available everywhere. Books are available, correct?
Yes.
All right. So I'm in a minute, I'm going to ask you for some final words and how to reach you. But first, I have to ask you the Mary question. So I end every podcast with this. Jay Armstrong is now retired, but when he was teaching, he was an honors English teacher in the Philadelphia area. And he would give his students the lyrics to Bruce Springsteen's Thunder Road. And they would read it as a poem, talk about the imagery Bruce uses and the themes Bruce explores. And they would ask his class at the end of the day, do you think Mary gets in the car? So, Janine, that is your question. Do you think Mary gets in the car at the end of Thunder Road?
Well, I am hopeful she did.
Okay,
I'm hopeful she did. Yeah. Yeah.
very nice. I like that. All right, if someone wants to reach you and find out more about the book, how can they?
They can go to my website. It's playdumbandsabotage.com.
Very nice. And any acting gigs coming up?
I just had an audition last week and I haven't heard back yet. So nothing in the books yet, but
August.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But a short film that I shot a couple years ago. It's making the festival rounds right now. It's called The Sundowner,
Okay.
Sundowning, The Sundowning.
Okay.
And it's kind of a horror, thriller horror, not horror horror, but
Yeah.
kind of short. So
Oh,
hopefully
nice.
that's making the round someplace.
Very cool. Any final thoughts before we get you out of here?
Don't be afraid to play. Yeah, don't be afraid to play with adults and children. Just be silly and animated and yeah, and
Ah,
dance.
yeah, perfect. Play Dumb and Sabotage by Janine Tang, available everywhere you can get books. Go to our website, sign up, find out more information. Thank you so much. This was so much fun. I appreciate it. You gave me a lot to think of, and I'm going to check out the book. So thank you for your time. Listeners, remember to be safe, remember to be kind, hang in there, and we will talk to you soon. Goodbye.
Awesome. Thank you.
And that's it. We're done. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you
Yay.
so much, Jesse.
No, I had a blast. I hope you did.
I did too. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a great evening.
Okay,
See you
you
later.
too.
Bye
Take
bye.
care. Bye bye.